r/Askreddit by Reddit and chill. Which paradox just mind ducks a person? The UK triple lock that people moving to the UK experience. Need proof of address and photographic ID to open a bank account. Need a bank account and photographic ID to rent a place. Need a bank account and an address to get sent your photographic ID. Checkmate atheists. Surely you don't need a bank account to get an ID. The ship of Theseus always kind of ducked me. So, there's this Greek dude called Theseus. And he's on a very long boat trip home. His ship needs repair. They stop. Replace a few rotten boards. And continue. Due to the particularly strenuous nature of this very long trip, several more of these stops for repairs are made. Until, by the very end, not a single board from the original vessel remains. Is this still the same vessel? If not, when did it cease to be? Additionally, devoted followers of Theseus saved all of the worn pieces as they were replaced, and rebuilt a ship with them. Now which ship is truly the ship of Theseus? Seems to be a great discussion piece, but in the end it comes down to interpretation. One of my favorites is Zeno's paradox. In order to leave my apartment, just for example, I have to walk halfway to my front door. Then I have to walk half the remaining distance. Then half that distance. Ad infinitum. In theory, I should never be able to reach the door. Now I love this paradox. Because we've actually solved it. It was a lively, well-discussed debate for millennia. At least a few early thinkers were convinced that motion was an illusion because of it. It was so persuasive an argument that people doubted their senses. Then Leibniz, and/or Newton, developed calculus, and we realized that infinite sums can have finite solutions. Paradox resolved. It makes me wonder what calculus we are missing to resolve some of these others. Edit. A lot more people have strong opinions about Zeno's paradox than I thought. To address common comments. 1. Yes. It's Zeno. Not Zeno. Blame autocorrect and my own fraught relationship with homophones. 2. Yes, there are 3 of them. 4. Okay. You think you could have solved it if you were living in ancient Greece. I profoundly regret that you weren't born back then to catapult our understanding 2 millennia into the future. 5. Yes. I agree Diogenes was a badass. I hope this covers everything. Reminds me of a joke. An engineer, a physicist, and a mathematician are at a bar and see a beautiful woman across the room. They're all too nervous to talk to her, so the physicist devises a plan to work up the necessary courage. Walk half the distance from them to her. Then half the remaining distance. And again. And again. The mathematician says it won't work because they will never actually get to her. The engineer says, well, it's close enough for practical purposes. The Boltzmann brain. The idea goes something like this. In any system, there is a tendency for entropy to increase. Which is another way of saying that everything tends to spread out. In a room full of gas, the gas fills the room. It does not pack itself in a corner. However, because of the weirdness of quantum fluctuations, it is possible for particles to just spontaneously arrange themselves into more complex configurations. It might take trillions and trillions of years. But if you watched that room full of gas long enough, sooner or later you would see all of the gas pack itself into one corner before spreading out again. Or, you might see the gas arrange itself into a fully functioning human brain, complete with false memories, senses, and a brief spark of consciousness. Of course, entropy would quickly take over again. The brain would dissolve back into gas almost immediately. This is also hideously unlikely. But over an infinite time the laws of physics tell us this is not just likely. It is inevitable. So which are you? Human? Or Boltzmann brain enjoying the briefest moment of your fictional life before you dissolve back into space dust? There's a joke I heard on this. Dr. Humdinger visits the same ice cream shop every day. He sits at the counter and orders 2 ice cream sundaes. One for him. And one at the empty seat beside him. Every day. He finishes his ice cream and leaves the other. He pays for both and leaves. After a week of this, the owner asks about this. The doctor explains, I'm a theoretical physicist. It is theoretically possible for the matter above this stool to spontaneously coalesce into a suitable mate. I want there to be ice cream ready for them. The owner replies, well, okay. But there are plenty of people in this shop every day. Why don't you strike up conversations? Maybe you'll find a suitable mate among them. Sure. But what are the odds of that? Fry becoming his own grandpa. He'd do the nasty and the pasty. Jim is my enemy. But it turns out that Jim is also his own worst enemy. And the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So, Jim is actually my friend. But, because he is his own worst enemy, the enemy of my friend is my enemy. So, actually Jim is my enemy. But, I see. Well, Jim needs to learn self-love then lol. Pinocchio says my nose will grow after I finish this sentence. Does it? Depends on if lying is a necessary condition for growth or merely a sufficient one. I frequently see Pinocchio resolved based on the intent of the speaker to tell the truth or lie. Otherwise, his curse can be used to learn absolute truths you have no other way of proving. It could even speculate about future events if X will do Y is considered a true or false statement. If you asked Rick Astley for his copy of Disney Pixar's Up, do you think he'd give it to you? Because think about it. He's never gonna give you up. But, at the same time, if he doesn't give you up, then he's let you down. But he's never gonna let you down. So which is it? At that point, he'll just have to say goodbye and desert you. Newcomb's paradox. There are two boxes, A and B. A contains either $1,000 or $0 and B contains $100. Box A is opaque, so you can't see inside. Box B is clear, so you can see for sure that there is $100 in it. Your options is to choose both boxes, or to choose only box A. There is an entity called the predictor, which determines whether or not the $1,000 will be in box A. How he chooses this is by predicting whether or not you will choose both boxes, or just box B. If the predictor predicts that you will 2 box, he will leave box A empty. If he predicts that you will 1 box, he will put the $1,000 in box A. He is accurate an overwhelming amount of the time, but not 100%. At the time of your decision, the money is already in box A, and nothing at that point will change it. It is a paradox of decision theory that rests on 2 principles of rational choice. If the money is already in box A or out of box A, then you should 2 box. Here your options are getting either $100 if box A is empty, or $1,100 if box A is full. If you 1 box and pick only box A, then your options are $1,000 if full, or $0 if empty. However, statistically, if you 1 box, your chances of getting more money increase. Robert Nozick summed it up well. To almost everyone, it is perfectly clear and obvious what should be done. The difficulty is that these people seem to divide almost evenly on the problem, with large numbers thinking that the opposing half is just being silly. Doesn't it really come down to how often the predictor is correct? If it's 99% of the time, then you should 1 box. But as his accuracy drops, the expected value of 2 boxing increases until it eventually surpasses 1 boxing. The bootleg paradox. The main example is Beethoven, so I'll use him. If you were to go back in time, you would see Beethoven. But when you get there, you cannot find Beethoven anywhere. But you have all of his music sheets. So you create all of Beethoven's music, so technically, you are Beethoven. Now the real question is, where did the music come from? And how did the name Beethoven come to be? Edit. There. I put in periods. Isn't that bootstrap? Gabriel's trumpet. Imagine a horn shaped like this, but is infinitely long. Let's say the diameter at the start is 1 foot, and every foot of length, the diameter is cut in half. Now let's figure out how much paint it takes to paint the inside of the horn. Well, that's infinite. It has an infinite length, so it has an infinite surface area. But wait, there is upper bound for the volume of this horn. You can intuitively put a box around the first 2 feet and realize that as the horn gets thinner and thinner, it can fit in the space left in the first 2 feet. So then if you were to just have a bucket of paint the size of that box, you could just dump all the paint in there and it would fill up the trumpet. Right? But yet, it has an infinite surface. So maybe not. You can use calculus to find a finite solution to an infinite problem. Psychology. Psychology is defined as the study of the human brain. That would mean that the human brain is teaching, studying, and learning from itself all at the same time. In a sense, the brain is the teacher, the textbook and the student at the same time. If the brain was so simple we could fully understand it, we'd be so simple that we couldn't. Paradox Interactive, every time they release a new DLC, everyone loses their damn minds. Stellaris has entered the chat. So I know this is just a silly thing, but at my old work, my department was good service. In our prep room, you had to always wear an apron. Always. No exceptions. When leaving the prep room, you had to take your apron off to prevent cross-contamination. The bosses were trying to figure out where to put the hooks. Inside in the back of the door. Or outside on the wall. Cole's Law. Very simple. Some love it. But I can't stand it. Very common. 2. Why the duck did I Google that? Can a man drown in the fountain of eternal life? Yes. The fountain only prevented aging. Drink the fountain and get beheaded. You dead. The Banach-Tarski paradox is one hell of a mind duck. It's basically taking something and rearranging it to form another exact copy of itself while still having the complete original. Like taking a sphere, which has infinite points on it, and drawing line from every point on its surface to the center, or the core of the sphere. Then you separate the lines from the sphere. But because there is infinite points, you now have an exact copy of the original sphere. It's kind of hard to explain here, so just watch the Vsauce video on it for a more in-depth explanation. One anagram of Banach-Tarski that I like is Banach-Tarski, Banach-Tarski. Also, thanks Bureaucracy. Takes experience to get most decent jobs. But how do you get a good job without experience? Work a shitty job. I'm upvoting this because it's been a long ass time since we got a paradox question on the front page. Okie tanks. My fav. Ones are anything related to time traveling and changing the future so that the traveling back in time wouldn't be necessary, and therefore nobody traveled back in time and changed the future. To say it quite simple. If you go back in time and kill your grandfather before your parents were conceived, then you could never have been born. If you were never born, then you never went back in time and killed your grandfather. That means you were born. However, it also means you did kill your grandfather, which means you weren't born. Time travel is impossible. The moment that time travel is invented is the moment that it's destroyed. It creates unlimited customization possibility of the universe, which makes all possibilities occur simultaneously, which means that someone somewhere sometime will decide that time travel was a bad idea, go back in time and kill the person that made time travel or make it not possible in some way. There will never be time travel because time travel is its own worst enemy. The universe either has to be infinite or we're in a box. However, if you ever reach the end that closes the universe in, it would be impossible for something to not be on the other side of the enclosure. At least to us. Since nothingness doesn't really exist in human perception. Those aren't the only options. Imagine space that loops. If you go a certain distance, you reach your starting point again. Walking on a sphere is like this. You're on a 2D surface with no boundaries. Yet it's finite. It loops around. How anything began. Whether you believe in creationism or the Big Bang, etc. Where did the beginning come from? God had to have started at some point. Those atoms that exploded into the universe had to come from somewhere. Where the duck did anything come from? A long time ago actually. Never. And also now. Nothing is nowhere. When? Never. Makes sense. Right? Like I said. It didn't happen. Nothing was never anywhere. That's why it's been everywhere. It's been so everywhere. You don't need a where. You don't even need a when. That's how every it gets. Forget this. I wanna be something. Go somewhere. Do something. I want things to change. I want to invent time and space. And I know it's possible because everything is here. And it probably already happened. I just don't know when to start. And that's exactly where it started. Ducking like and subscribe.